Hi, I'm Angela Ryder. Thanks for joining me today. Every new moon, eclipse, solstice, or other astrological cycle, I always see an uptick in the content about manifesting your desires, setting your intentions, and doing rituals to call in what you want. Like, there's always seems to be a cycle attached to the promise of manifestation. And I want to offer a different perspective. This isn't to harsh on anybody's rituals. I like a ritual, and especially if it feels supportive. But because I think a lot of what gets circulated in spiritual spaces about manifestation is doing people harm, I think I want to share about how we can do it better. So here's the basic premise of most likely what you're going to hear about manifestation content. It's set your intentions, raise your vibrations, do the ritual, align with the frequency of what you want, and it'll come to you. But there's also the projection that if it doesn't come, then you must not have high-fived yourself enough, or you did something wrong, or that you have a block that's preventing it. And I just want to say no. That's just not helpful. So here are a few specific things that I see a lot in the manifestation messages that I find problematic. And the first one I find really harmful, which is you manifest everything that happens to you. No. Some of the experiences of what we experience can be traced back to our choices and patterns, and so there is real value in examining that. But a lot of what happens to people, illness, loss, systemic hardship, or other people's choices affecting our lives is not something that you manifested, and you're not responsible for that. You have to take account to how you respond to it, but you're not responsible for manifesting that. And when you tell someone they created their own suffering, it's like it's not spiritual wisdom. It's like cruelty dressed up in flowery spiritual language. And this is another crusty, disheartening trope that I hear that these are all set up on, which is just do these 5 steps and you'll get whatever you want. Maybe, not usually though. And the reason these programs appear to work for some people sometimes is not because the steps are magic. It's because the people they work for are already following their intuition, already have some clarity about what they want, and the program gave them a structured way to organize their focus and take action. The steps didn't create the results. The person's own readiness and movement did. And to be truthful about this, and what gets me really upset, it's also often just privileged access to resources or support that others don't have. So yeah, manifestation is going to work if you have deep pockets or privilege. And lastly, this inferred projection of if you're not manifesting, you're not doing it right. This is where that privilege piece matters, and I want to be really upfront about it. The just raise your vibe framework assumes a baseline of safety, resources, time, and options. It doesn't account for the reality that a lot of people are navigating systemic barriers, caregiving responsibilities, health challenges, financial constraints, or trauma that makes high vibe your way to abundance. Actually, really an unhelpful message. Not everyone is starting from the same place, and that's not a mindset or vibe problem. That's the reality of what you're dealing with. And this doesn't mean you can't manifest. It just means that following somebody else's rules or rituals of manifestation aren't necessarily going to work for you the same way. And the so-called failure to manifest isn't your fault. And what about timing? So none of this doesn't mean, or any of this doesn't mean that timing doesn't matter. It does. We have to be ready and we have to have that capacity. But, like the new moon cycle is a real energetic cycle. Collective transits are real. Your personal astrology, your cycles, transits, patterns specific to your chart can create real influence in what's easier or harder to move in any given period. And if you follow astrology, that can be useful information. But there's a difference between using timing as useful context and using it as a pressure campaign against yourself. The new moon or other astrological aspect isn't a deadline. Missing it doesn't mean you missed your chance. And the collective energy of a transit may not align what's personally active for you right now. Your timing is your own. And, I've been here. There are also cycles that have nothing to do with astrology. It's sort of like when you're hot, and when you're not, you're not. Sometimes you're in a hot period. Energy is high, focus comes easily, things move, and sometimes you're not. And the not hot periods are real, and they're also not a failure. They're often when the internal work is happening, the clarifying, the resting, the discerning of what you actually want versus what you've been told you want. That's when it happens. So trying to force output during those not hot periods is usually draining and confusing rather than productive. So what actually works? Here's my perspective from my personal experience and with clients over the past 13 years. Clarity comes with engagement, not before it. This matters because a lot of people who turn to manifestation practices are stuck and they don't know how to get from where they are to where they want to be. And the idea that you need to achieve clarity first before you can take any steps is part of what keeps people stuck. And really, to start, you just need a little assessment time with yourself to distinguish between what really feels like an invitation from your inner guidance and what's a conditioned response to hustle culture or consumer pressure or comparing yourself to what everybody else seems to be creating. So if you want to start at the very basics, it's like once you've identified the thing that you feel that you want and feels the most true at this point, is to ask, is this something I actually want? Or is this something I think I should want because of what I'm being sold or I see others doing? And that discernment is worth more than any ritual. And it's totally okay if you don't know. You can take a step of curiosity and exploration towards whatever it is that you want. And then see what perspective shift, and then the next step gets revealed. Intentions and rituals can be useful, but with this important reframe. The ritual is not making the thing happen. It's a dedicated focal time to get clear and infuse your intention with real attention and align yourself with the direction that you want to move. Speaking your intentions out loud matters too, not because the universe is listening for magic words, but because articulating what you want creates clarity within yourself and signals to your spirit team what you'd like support with. You don't need an elaborate ritual for this. You can just say it plainly. This is what I want to create. This is the direction I want to move in, and I'm open to support and guidance. And the end point may not be what you thought. When we stay focused on a specific outcome and try to plot the path to it, we can miss the invitation or get so fixated on that we don't leave ourselves open for plans to shift. Sometimes you start moving towards one thing and it leads you somewhere that you couldn't have planned. And the actual goal is a direction that gets you moving. And what you find as you move is often more aligned with maybe what your higher self actually had in mind than what your original vision was. So this is my invitation to you based on what I find most helpful. Whenever you want to do a ritual or use some celestial timing to reflect, instead of asking what you want to manifest, ask yourself, what keeps repeatedly coming up as a desire, direction, or restlessness, even when you try to put it aside. That persistent thing is usually the deeper invitation and an important clue to pay attention to, instead of something that you come up with in response to a new moon or some other program call to action. So once you come up with what feels the most true to you or is trying to get your attention the most often, just ask, does this feel like my inner guidance, or is this kind of a conditioned wanting because that's what I think I should do because that's what everybody else wants? And there's a difference, because that inner truth feels quiet and the other kind of want feels more like a fear of missing out or comparing yourself to others or responding to what's being marketed to you. So if your truth feels true to you, like, oh, I really want to explore this, this is what keeps coming up, just ask yourself, what's the next smallest step that I could take in that direction? Do not try to figure out the whole plan, just the next step, because that next step is going to get you moving and it will change your perspective because you'll be in a different position and it shows you something you couldn't see from where you are now. And also, if you're in one of those not hot periods where nothing seems to be moving, that's okay too. Use the time to get clearer about what you actually want or what's trying to get your attention, rather than pushing yourself to produce or manifest. Clarity can also come even when it feels like you're doing nothing. But if you're trying to manifest, you need to actually make a choice and take a step. So, kind of to wrap things up, manifesting often gets sold to us as like this capitalistic repackaging of New Age principles. Those are stripped of context. They don't have any nuance, and they don't acknowledge any of the complexity of human lives or systemic privilege that might be attached to that manifestation. And if you have to boil this down as a key takeaway, assess and discern what your true inner want is, take that next available step, and trust that your higher self and spirit team are working with you, even if you can't see how yet. And you don't have to wait for a specific time to focus your intention and attention towards creating a desired change. Any time that feels like an invitation to reflect is a good time to do that. And if you have questions about any of the things that I shared today, or want to share what's been coming up for you about manifestation or rituals, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. And if you'd like support getting clear about what's actually yours versus what's the conditioned noise about manifestation or anything else, we can address that in a session, and the link is in my description. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you next time.